This video is going to be super long and I apologize for that. Wow, it's been quite some time since I've done a vault video for any of my classes, but today we're going to be mostly looking at the Brewmaster Monk and walking through like my decision-making process. There's a lot of things that I want to discuss. Being early in the season, we have to discuss obviously like things like the choices from the vault, what's going to be a meaningful upgrade for now, as well as the future, and mostly talking about the dinar system, the bullions. So I want to talk about all that in this video. I did end up playing a little bit of my paladin and my demon hunter, but it was mostly like raid finder and a couple of keys here and there. So I probably won't actually do those in this video, but maybe in a future video. Let's dive in. Alrighty, so I do want to discuss bullions quite in depth because I think there's a lot of interesting like kind of routes you can go with what you're going to spend your bullions on. I'm probably going to, in this video, spend my bullion. I'm going to go probably do like an LFR boss or two just to try to get this. But let's talk about what I'm hoping for Vault, as well as kind of like recapping up what I did last week. So I went really hard. I posted it, I think, on Twitter today, but I did like 45 timed runs, let alone untimed runs and keys that people hearthed out of last week. So I estimate last week I probably ran about 60 dungeons on my Brewmaster alone. So I did quite a bit. I also did time walking dungeons as well to get my item. I did a good bit of raiding. I cleared all of normal, all of heroic with my guild. And I also happened to clear 3 mythic bosses. So we did Aranog, Council, and Taros. So we did a lot last week. I was able to farm out gear in most of my slots. I have pretty much 509 gear in almost every single slot outside of bracers, but even if I got bracers, I don't know if I'd run them because the battle res has saved many O keys of mine. And the ring, I've gotten a few good rings, or not good rings, I've gotten rings, but they're kind of very weak stats, and this is where I'm getting a lot of my critical strike from. So dropping this ring means I lose about 6% crit, which I don't want to do quite yet. So I have some itemization I still need to do. But basically, 509 gear in every slot. We were able to snag mythic shoulders. I think this came from Primal Council. So crit mastery shoulders I'm actually very happy with. I'm actually going to catalyze these most likely in the near future because the stats on them are actually, I think, better in generally speaking than what I have currently. And we also happen to get a mythic Decoration of Flame. Decoration of Flame isn't necessarily like the best trinkets, but the item level that it's currently at, I'm very content with it. I was able to loot a Forge Storm. I was able to loot the crit verse weapon from Azure Vaults. So all in all, just like really good gear. Now in terms of crafting, I did something a little different than I think a lot of people did. I would have recommended making boots if you asked me about a week ago, but I didn't take into account what happens if I loot a good item on the toxic patch piece that I have embellished, which were shoulders. So because I looted these mythic shoulders, I ended up crafting a belt instead with the infused power of decay to make sure I can still keep that embellishment slot. Next time the craft comes around, which I believe is next week, I'll probably upgrade my slimy explosion boots next. But for now, I'm gonna just hang on to these and just keep them at 486. Not a big deal. Okay, so Vault. Let's talk about kind of the things I'm hoping for. With clearing a couple of mythic bosses, I'm going to have 1 mythic slot as well as 2 heroic slots for Vault of the Incarnates. I'm assuming it's just Vault and not other raids that I've done in the past or for the Fated season. And then I did enough to have just like full mythic track in terms of dungeon gear. The biggest bonus would be a tier item. Not a catalyst, not something I can catalyze, but an actual tier piece item in any of the slots that aren't shoulders. That would be like best case scenario. If I got shoulders, I probably wouldn't take them. I'd probably just hope that my guild leader will give me an Omni token this week. So we're hoping for tier. And then if not that, I'm hoping for one of the rare rings. And then after that, like any kind of like tertiary kind of item that's like an upgrade. So I'm going to set my loot spec to Brewmaster. Actually, let me think about this. No, there's some good trinkets from Mythic Plus that I would want to get. I would just hate to like rip a Decoration of Flame, you know? Okay, so that's kind of my hope. Let's see what we get. I've been super excited for this all day, but I've also been really nervous. So we'll see here. Oh, man. Oh, okay. All right. Let's talk about these options because this is kind of nutty. Okay, so first things first, we got a mythic track helm with a socket in it. These stats for Brewmaster are really bad. You don't really want a lot of haste. You can make arguments for it in a single target, but generally speaking, haste, mastery, probably your 2 worst stats. This is the 1 tier item I would recommend ignoring. Now, it's on a mythic track, and it has a prismatic socket in it, which is just super unfortunate. Because this actually incentivizes me to take it because it would be an upgraded item. I'm aware that sockets now are half price compared to what they were in previous seasons, so socketing a helm wouldn't be difficult to do. So while a very good item, I don't know if I can take it. It would allow me to get 4 set right now, but I would be essentially like, I'd eventually want to replace this with just a different helmet. Ideally Crown of Roiling Storms from Ruby Life Pools on a mythic track, or even a heroic track with a socket. So this is a difficult choice. In terms of my weapons, not a great staff and not a great necklace. This necklace is high crit, low haste. While it would be like a little bit better stats, I can argue off of what I currently have in terms of my stat distribution. Just pretty much not going to take it. And then same with the Awakened Planar Pillar. Verse Mastery, but the thing is I already am wearing a Forge Storm and a Refraction's Edge, so chances are I probably wouldn't take this either, especially because it's on the hero track compared to the mythic track. I really want to focus on mythic track loot. So let's move down to the dungeon pool, which is insane that I got the 2 items that I was looking for. Okay, so we have Granite's Enduring Scale on a mythic track at 522. This trinket, for those who ended up playing with it this week at all, or last week I should say, super good trinket. It pretty much makes you immune to damage. It's a 75% damage reduction while the shield persists. It's a 2-minute cooldown, so you use the item. It gives you a 1.3 million damage absorbed shield, and 75% of your incoming damage that you take is absorbed into that value instead, and 25% still comes through. But with how stagger works, this is basically makes you immune for your full health pool. While the shield persists, your armor is increased, and every time you're struck, you gain additional armor per hit, I guess, stacking. So your armor actually goes up as the shield gets reduced. And then once it expires or it's broken, it explodes, dealing 300k damage split between all nearby enemies. Now, the damage of this isn't really a big factor. It's a small little bonus for using the item consistently. But generally speaking, defensively, this is probably one of the best, if not the best, arguably, defensive trinkets you can get from Mythic Plus. It's up there with Treemouth's Festering Splinter, but Treemouth's Festering Splinter does damage to you, and it doesn't do damage to mobs, where this does damage to mobs. The only difference is the cooldown. Okay, we have Iridia's Fragment as well. This is pretty much garbage. It's a 3-minute cooldown trinket. This trinket is really only good for 3-minute base classes, things like Boomkin. You can argue things like maybe Unholy DK, but generally speaking, probably not a good trinket. And then we have Scalebane Signet. Now, this is probably one of the better rings you can get from Mythic Plus if you're not going for the rare rings, which would be a mistake. We'll talk about that in a second. So if I was to look for kind of a quick little upgrade here, this actually isn't bad. It comes with a socket, so I don't have to worry about spending currency in the future, but I think that this is probably going to be replaced very quickly, so I'm probably going to ignore this one, even though it is a very good item that dropped. So we're going to ignore these 4 slots. So right now, I'm trying to decide between taking the Helm for my 4 set or taking the Mythic Track Granite's Enduring Scale. Oh my god. And I don't know what to do. There's a couple things we need. I try to keep in mind when I'm making this decision, especially early on in the season. What is gonna benefit me now, and what's gonna benefit me in the future? And what's gonna, obviously, like, the thing that benefits me in the future is the thing that also benefits me now. So short term, the tier set would be insane. I'd be able to wear 4 set. My item level would drastically grow, blow up, because I'm currently wearing, like, obviously 489 gear from last season in my tier slots. So it would allow me to wear my 509 pieces. So my overall item level equip would go up significantly. But I'm eventually going to replace this at some point with any of the other 4 tier pieces, and I would arguably either craft a helm or hopefully get one from Vault in the near future. So, fuck, this is such a hard decision. Now, I could spend the time and try to go pug some LFR to see if I could get an Omni token, to see if I can get maybe like a tier piece from LFR. I can wait until normal or heroic grid, and hopefully most of my guild has acquired their 4 set by now, and Omni tokens or specific items like Zenith tokens that drop can be allocated to me, though my guild prioritizes DPS and healers before tanks, so that's kind of a hard argument to make. So it's so hard, but I'm probably going to have to pass on the tier set. Because I think Granite's Enduring Scale is just too strong to really pass up. I would probably run this maybe over Resonator. While Resonator is really nice, it's a passive trinket, it does a lot of damage, and it does a pretty good absorb value. I think Granite's Enduring Scale will allow me to flourish in higher keys and quite frankly, like larger pulls, which is something that Brewmaster kind of struggles with. So I think I'm going to end up taking... Fuck. Okay, hold on. I want to see something, and this is a really bad way to look at this. So there's two sites I want to look at. I'm going to look at Murlok IO, and I'm also going to look at Archon. Now, this is going to indicate what people have been running. What it does is it aggregates data from Warcraft logs, so it works very similar. It's kind of like another version of subcreation. I like the layout of the site. This is mostly used for PvP, but they've added a Mythic Plus element. Is the site super accurate? You have to take it with a grain of salt, just like all sites. But what we can do is we can scroll down. We can see heat maps for talents. We can see what gear people are running. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can actually see what trinkets are being ran. And we can see here that 5 players are opting in for the Granite Scale. It's the rank 4 trinket. Some people are still using Tainted Raychart and Prophetic Stone Scales. This can depend on luck. Being early in the season, people have to kind of use what they had in their old kits. And pushing the highest level of keys, you're going to want more defensive trinkets. But I think, honestly, with the loot pool from Naku Defensive, it's pretty difficult to actually loot this trinket. And early on, I doubt people are rolling Brewmaster or Tank for you to give you the trinket. So this makes me think that it would be better to grab that. If we look at tier as well, we can see a few people running Gaze of the Waking Fists, but most people are opting to use this or Crown of Rolling Storms, like I mentioned before, from Ruby Life Pools. So, all right, so we looked here. Granite seems to be the better play. Let's take a look at Archon. So Archon GG has been acquired Warcraft logs or vice versa. So Archon is another way to look at... It's essentially, they also acquired Mythic Plus Subcreation or Subcreation in general. So let's take a look at what Brewmasters are currently running. So we can actually come into here. We can look at gear and tier sets, for example, and we can scroll down to... Are trinkets at the bottom? Or did I pass it? Are they more towards the top? So it looks like if we're looking here, we're seeing Firak, Prophetic Stone Scales, Ultimate Master Decoration. Granite Scale is being ran in the max key of +11, so it's not being opted to be ran in anything higher than that as of right now. But again, needing a cheat death or a Tainted Raychart is important. Also, keep in mind that in terms of Brewmaster, the only people really running 14s are like Booty Brew, obviously Equinox, Mordrim, and Economics, I think. So not a lot of players playing in the highest end keys, so it's really going to be up in the air. We do have people running Gaze of the Waking Fist as well. Oh, I don't know what to do. I genuinely don't know what to do. I want to gimp myself and just get tier set so I can just do big damn and like have a crazy high item level. It's on the mythic track, so in theory I could just run it for a while. The problem is I'll be losing a lot of crit and verse if I run this helmet, so that's a problem I need to kind of keep in mind. Yeah, it's a difficult decision because I'm kind of I'm really trying to like muscle down what I want now versus what I want later. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do LFR. I'm gonna get my bullion, and I'm going to see if I can get maybe an Omni token or a tier item, because if I do get a tier item in some way, shape, or form, I will be able to well, I won't have to worry about the helm because I'll have my 4 set anyways. So let me go do that, and I'll be right back. Well, no tier. So honestly, what's probably going to end up happening is I don't want to do this. I really don't want to have to do this, but I'm probably going to sit on my vault. What's the value of a... I'm getting really, like, nitpicky here. Oh, man. I know this has been, like, a lot of contemplating. I think I'm going to go Granite's Enduring Scale for the time being. I still have normal raid, heroic raid, and arguably, maybe if we get deep enough in Mythic, there's going to be tier. If not, I can always catalyze next week. It's not going to be the biggest deal. It's going to be... not a long season, but not a short season. I think Granite's Enduring Scale at max item level is going to be a little bit more valuable than current tier. Dude. All right, hold on. I need to figure something out. Okay, I've done the math on it. This has taken me, I think I've been at this for like an hour now, between like Raid Finder and trying to decide what to pick. I think I'm going to go tier Helm. And let me explain my thought process. So Granite's Scale is arguably farmable, while tier is limited this early on in the season. So in terms of short-term gratification, tier set will be better, I think, than Granite Scale, because my trinket setup is arguably fine. You know, next week, chance at Fearax, Rage Heart, and I can always buy the item as well. Also, in terms of like short-term gains, I'm going to be saving on crests because the Mythic Razageth Helm, which is the thing that I've looted here in this vault slots, because if you aren't familiar, you can pretty much get only the bosses you've killed, as well as any tier item based off of the boss of that raid tier. The helm comes off of Razageth, so it's a little bit higher. So I'm going to be saving on Mythic tracks, and I'm going to be saving somewhat long term because I can get a socket. Now I crunched the numbers a little bit based off of my current gear. I'm actually only going to be losing about 2% critical strike, which I can make up at least 1% of that by re-gemming, because right now I think I'm gemmed more for versatility. And it's going to provide me about 4% haste, which, while not necessarily great, I don't really have haste on my gear currently, so having in the realm of 5% haste 5 to 6% haste might not be the end of the world. Now, this is more or less short-term gratification. Now, I also crunched the numbers on Granite Scale. I'm only losing, in terms of absorb value, total absorb value, I'm losing a close to 100k per absorb, but the 75% damage reduction, looking at logs, it seems like it's very difficult to chew through that amount of damage in the given time period of 20 seconds. Now in hierarchies, obviously this is going to be a little bit easier to do, but I do expect on replacing this trinket anyways with something a little bit more powerful down the line. So I actually, unfortunately, I thought this was a really hype vault, but honestly, neither of these items really have any longevity in terms of my character's progression. So with that being said, I think in order to save on more short-term stuff now, like, you know, saving a socket potentially, having a little bit more haste on my gear for single target encounters, or just having better energy regen in keys, as well as, yeah, just saving crests, I think I'm actually going to go Helm based off of this vault. So it took me literally an hour and a half to figure all of this out, but yeah, we're gonna be going Helm. It does hurt to pass up on Scale. I'm sure some of you in the comments are going to laugh at me for passing up on a Scale, but I have expectations to have a little bit better better setup in terms of trinkets, and not to mention that Granite Scale is farmable, where tier set is limited by catalyst charges as well as raid loot and the generosity of either, you know, Lady Luck or generosity of your raid leader, which, based on our prioritization and raid, I don't think is going to favor me all that well. So we're going to go with the tier helmet. Also, not to mention that it's like fine for Mistweaver if I ever want to play Mistweaver as a, you know, off spec, or it's not horrible for Windwalker. Now, they don't like haste really at all, but being a little bit higher level item level helm is pretty solid. So we went with the helm. I'm already starting to regret it a little bit, but we can now go craft our 4 set. So basically what I want to figure out, and this is something I could look up, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to just do it by using the catalyst here, is basically I want to replace my 4 set. So right now I have the helmet. So we're good on the helmet. I have 2 catalyst charges, as you can see here. Let me throw the chest in, for example. I have 2 catalyst charges now, and I have my Awakened Mark of Mastery, which means I can go buy a piece of my choosing. So the chest is probably one of our better pieces. This is going to give us crit and versatility. High verse, low crit, pretty solid here. This is going to allow me to shift some of my verse gems back into crit gems because I'm losing the helm anyways, the stats on my current tier set helm from last season. And I'm going to be gaining a little bit of versatility or critical strike compared to my current chest, which does have haste on it, which overall is going to be good. I'm going to lose a little bit of leech though there. So chest is actually something that we're going to do now, and I'm just going to slam this. Okay, so now we have tier helm, tier chest, allowing me to make my current 2 set. And now we need to identify which piece I'm going to want to put my last slot in, or maybe buy, because I know for a fact that I am going to do the shoulders here. They are mythic track, so I want to upgrade them all the ways to have that. It's also high crit, a little low haste. Yes, it has haste on it, which isn't necessarily the best, but it has the high crit. So I do want to actually catalyze these shoulders, but before I do so, the pants are going to give high versus low mastery, and the gloves are going to give low crit, high mastery. I think in terms of my stat distribution, I'm probably going to end up buying gloves for the time being. And I'm trying to debate this because I could wear these pants now then to bolster my item level up a little bit, but the problem with doing that is it's high haste, low crit compared to the gloves, which is high crit, low haste. So ultimately what I probably end up doing is I might end up buying the pants instead, especially because my pants are 506 compared to the 509 I'm going to be able to buy from this item. So we're going to actually end up doing our shoulders here though. So let's slam the shoulders in. We'll transform these. So now I have a 3 set, and we're going to go pick up our 4 set here in a second. Bada bing, bada boom. Just in case you're not familiar, the place where you buy bullions or buy gear with bullions is right across from the Maiden of Inspiration, or the Inspiration Catalyst thing here on the east side. Right across from the book, you're going to go into the little mountain hole here. And yeah, this is where the vendors are. Okay. So Wowhead posted an article today with all of the guide writers' suggestions with the gear that you should buy for each spec respectively. Well, I don't disagree. I think people should be wary. It's a little misleading because a lot of for DPS, most likely they're going to be fairly accurate. I don't know all the DPS like the back of my hand in the game, so it's hard for me to disprove anything. But in terms of Brewmaster, the things that they suggested were, to me, a little off. You're going to have at least a minimum of 6 total purchases. So you want to allocate basically some type of log of the 6 items you're going to want to aim for and buy. And the priority of those items should shift based off of your kind of current luck. Now, of course, it's always good to buy the best item for your class. But for example, let's say last week you happened to loot a really good trinket, or maybe you found a normal version of one of the rare rings from the raid and you happen to loot it, like the Aeronog ring or the Broodkeeper ring. Obviously, you might want to try to buy the item to upgrade it all the way to mythic instead of having a normal track item, but you already have the item, and therefore the value of the purchase of your dinar on that first buy is going to be nullified by the fact that you already have the item, even if it's at a lower item level. The Wowhead article, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'll pull it up here if I remember. I think they recommend buying Dijarun or Thorncaller's Claw first, which is fine. Hear me out, it's fine. But if you haven't looted like another good offhand for Thorncaller's Claw, don't buy Thorncaller's Claw if you don't have another one-handed weapon to utilize. Dijarun is also a weird choice. While it does do adequate damage and it's comparable to Thorncallers with another offhand, especially something like Forward Storm, the damage of Dijarun is it's an on-use cooldown, and it shares a cooldown with trinkets. So if you're using on-use trinkets, Dijarun is going to feel really, really awkward to play with, because now you have a third trinket button, a third thing to hit, and it's just going to feel weird to use, especially if you're trying to, like, let's say you use Dijarun and then all of a sudden you take a big sum of damage that you weren't ready for, and you try to panic react with one of your trinkets. Guess what? You're probably dead. So you want to be wary of like buying those things. If you looted a good weapon or you don't have a good defensive trinket, you might want to maybe think about it a little bit and figure out a better item to buy. So for me, for example, I've thought about this a lot this last week. I happen to loot a Decoration of Flame on Mythic. I've upgraded it all the way. While it's not the best trinket, it is solid. I was going to buy Fearax Tainted Rage Heart first because it's a very strong offensive and defensive trinket. But because I have Decoration of Flame and because I have Inexorable Resonator, that on my priority list has now moved down. I have Forward Storm, right? Which means that ideally I should be buying Thorncaller's Claw, but the weapon doesn't offer main stat. My stats currently are going to be a little weird because I'm trading out some crit gear for some haste gear and like new tier. So I need to be careful on that. So I don't want to go and buy a haste verse weapon right away because I know my haste might be a little bit high. So I might have to figure out what weapon I'm going to like transition towards. So a big thing for me is survivability in keys. I've been running up to 11s. I've attempted a 12 or 2. And what I'm finding is that I just don't have enough survivability, even running decent trinkets. So I could buy a trinket, a better trinket than I have currently. But problem with that is the upgrade compared to like the upgrade value of like buying one of the rare rings, for example, compared to buying a trinket is going to be much different. I think that the rare ring for my character specifically is going to be a better value for my first buy compared to a different item, especially when one of those items or two of those items come from a raid that's going to happen this week from Aberrus or next week a Mirror Seal. So I still have a chance to loot it before actually spending bullions on it. So for me personally, when it comes to bullions, I am probably going to buy Broodkeeper's, the Seal of Filial Duty, which is off of Vault of the Incarnates. And the main reason I'm, advocating for it for my character is because it's a ton of healing. It's going to offer about 6 to 8% overall healing for the Brewmaster Monk in a given instance. Mostly I'm referring to keys in this case, which is going to provide me way more healing value than it would if I were to buy Fear Extended Rage Heart, because some of my trinkets are already doing 7% overall, and trading out the 7% for an 8% is only a 1% increase in healing compared to if I bought Broodkeeper's Ring. Holy shit. So I hope that like explanation of how I'm handling my bullions makes sense. I'm going to try to buy the thing that's going to give me the biggest upgrade while also taking into account my current character's progression and upcoming possible events like raid and mythic plus farming. So for me personally, I'm going to buy Broodkeeper's Ring. This is going to give me a heavy amount of mastery, but it is going to reduce my crit by a fair amount. And while it does have haste on it, it's not a bad ring for Brewmaster. I've heard this question a lot on stream. Haste is not a bad stat. It is the worst stat. So having a little bit of haste on this ring, we're already hitting diminishing returns on a lot of our stats like critical strike and versatility. So the next thing we want to lean into is mastery, and having a ring with heavy mastery plus a very sizable absorption shield will typically net you a bigger benefit. And on top of that, we just passed Vault, which means I have to wait at least 2 weeks to get this. And it's a rare item that drops from the raid. And if it drops, it most likely might go to another character, like a Warlock, for example, or another class that does fire damage, like an Evoker. So I'm going to go with Seal of Filial Duty. So we have purchased our first bullion item. And last but not least, I kind of forgot about this, but we are going to buy... I'm not sure what I want to buy yet. We want to make sure we're buying the hero gear. I've seen some people make that mistake where they accidentally bought the PvP gear. You can tell it's PvP gear because it says increase item level to a minimum of 528 in arenas or battlegrounds. So make sure you're buying on the left-hand side. There's only one sheet. It's either going to be hero gear or champion. Let's make sure we're focusing on the hero gear. So in my case, I'm looking for gloves or pants. Pants will give me more verse, but I'll lose crits. Gloves will give me a little less crit than I currently have compared to the gloves I'm wearing, but it'll give me more ideal stats than the pants would. So for the time being, I think I'm going to actually end up buying gloves. Probably not the best decision, but it's my decision, and that's okay. All right, so now I have new foreset, which is upgraded, and the last thing now I'm going to be probably going out and farming tonight on stream, most likely, is going to be some pants. So I just jumped up a significant amount of item level equipped. I jumped up 5 whole item levels, which is pretty impressive. And now I do want to spend a few seconds just enchanting my gear and kind of talking about this week. So this video is going to be super long, and I apologize for that. So this week is now Aberrus. The raids rotate once a week. I know some people were a little confused about that still. Originally, Blizzard did talk that it was going to rotate every other week to give time, like guilds time to progress through the raid and whatnot. And they ended up with a lot of community feedback was against that. So they rolled it back, which is like good and bad news. It means that you don't have access to get those rare rings again or any kind of trinkets or things that you would have missed out on essentially last week. You have to basically, you're going to go into Aberrus and continue rotating through. Now, good thing is you get to do Aberrus. You get to do a new raid. There's some items from Aberrus that are very, very powerful. There's some really good rings for Brewmaster for kind of this early gear progression. I got the ring actually last week from my weekly quest, but Signet of the Last Elder, really high verse, low crit, very strong ring for the Brewmaster Monk. There's some good trinkets, especially for damage. We do have things like Anvil, you have things like Bomb Dispenser, and Beacon arguably is okay. Pretty shit compared to a lot of the trinket pool, but generally speaking, it's pretty good. Dijarun, Pillar of the Other Flame drops. That's a great item. If it drops for my guild, there's a high chance I might get it. So generally speaking, Abras does have a lot of cool loot. It's a very fun raid. It's pretty easy to get through, and with a massive increase in item level, normal and heroic farming for pugs should be much, much, much easier. Now, luckily for me, I did a ton of farming last week, so some of this gear I'm actually going to be able to upgrade like pretty quickly. My CeeLo Fly duty is already 509 because I had plenty of rings to kind of pull from. This is a ring that I'm probably going to look at upgrading in the near future as well. I'm going to be spending a good bit of stuff. I'm probably going to upgrade my mantle, but generally speaking, this week you can spend all of your crests on just upgrading your gear because there is no craft this week, which is kind of a benefit. Now, I am looking at my stat weights, and I'm a little sad about where my versatility is and my critical strike compared to my mastery. My mastery is a lot higher. Part of that's going to come from the fact that I'm wearing Gaze of the Waking Fist. I forgot to actually pick up another socket there, so I'm going to go do that now. But I'm going to be shifting out a lot of my like sockets and enchants for versatility and crit, where what I was running before was I was actually putting a lot of stuff into mastery because I was already hitting like heavy DRs on some of my stats. So I was able to just drop my mastery by another 2% there. My crit's back up to 34%. I'm probably going to grab a verse socket with critical strike off. Little Mally G, we're going to go versatility crits, which should be radiance. Perfect. So we're going to buy one of these. I'm going to throw this in my helmet. We also need to make sure I'm enchanting my helmet as well since I replaced it. So there's kind of a lot to do here. So we're going into helmet. We're throwing this gem in, which is good. So like I said, my verse is going to be at 24. My crit's going to be at 34, which is good. And when I pop a Vial of Tepid Verse, this should actually knock me up to around the 30% mark. So I'm not actually too worried about my stat distribution. My mastery, I would say, is a little high, but that's something that I'm going to stress about. Again, like I said, there's some items that I haven't fully like optimized yet. There's things that I still need to upgrade. I think I can get a better cloak from raiding, a better necklace for sure. I want something that has crit and verse on it compared to verse and mastery. So yeah, there's a lot of options we have here. So we're going to grab our incandescent essence and throw this on our helmet. So we're going to be looking pretty good here. So I went from being 504 equipped to being 510. I'm 511 in bags. It's probably because I have these pants that I can put on. Yes, it is the pants. But massive gains this week, or Tuesday, from Vault. That took a lot of effort. Obviously, it took us doing Raid Finder. It took us doing some math and crunching numbers. Both of the... Am I happy with the Granite Scale, like passing up on it? Probably. I'm probably going to regret it in the future when all of a sudden it's like, okay, you need to have this, and I pass it up on it at mythic item level. But generally speaking, I'm pretty happy. This is going to be a short season for me because I'm planning to go into beta testing eventually, and I'm planning to play a lot of Pandemonium. So I'm not too worried about my character this season. Any big upgrade I can really grab is going to be fine for me. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry for like the long rants. I am going to be probably going into stream, and I will be raiding Wednesday and Thursday this week if you want to pop in and say hi. Those links will be down in the description below. Massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, well, I wouldn't be able to do content like this. So hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.